Hey everyone, Dave here. Got another interdimensional swap for you guys. This week we're going to be featuring an episode from the Ghost Story guys. Sarge and I had the pleasure of being a guest on their show in a future episode coming out of theirs. I believe it's actually coming out this week. I honestly don't remember. I think it's the 12th. It was a lot of fun. We had some good conversations, joked a lot, shit talked a bunch, but it was really fun. They're really cool guys, so definitely give this episode a listen and then give them a follow so that way you can be prepared for when our interview with them comes out on their feed. I'm really bad at these intro things, so I'm just gonna wrap it up. But here you go. Here's the episode of the Ghost Story guys. Be aware, be haunted, Delaware. Enjoy.
Hold hands and close your eyes. It's midnight, and you're listening to the Ghost Story guys. Welcome to the Ghost Story guys. I am the king of hay fever, Brennan Storr.
And I am a man who fears no pollen. I am Paul Bestel.
And this is the show where we talk about spooks, specters, and all the other things watching us from the shadows beyond the campfire. Some conversations only make sense after the sun has set, and this is most definitely one. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode number 213, and we are sneezily coming to you from that mountain cabin you dream about, but can never quite reach. Paul, my friend, it's allergy season. There's just no two ways about it. I even forgot the last bit of the intro there because I have just sneezed myself stupid.
The only thing I get is a tickly throat.
It sucks, is the short version. I won't belabor it, but if I sound all stuffed up, it's not because I am choked with emotion. I mean, any more than usual. It is because I am at active war with the trees in my neighborhood.
Perhaps you need to try that honey therapy.
Is that the one you sent me the video of, you sick bastard? Folks, look, we're going to get to the ghost stories in a second, but nothing could be more frightening than the honey massage video Paul sent me. I get a note saying, do not open this in a public place. I'm like, what the fuck is he? Oh, that's what it is. And you know what? I'll put a link in the show notes so you can all suffer with me.
Hey, don't blame me. Blame my brother. He was the one that found it and sent it to me.
Okay, well, that I believe.
I made up for it. I sent you the new Predator trailer.
This is true. Yeah, entirely different kind of Predator.
I'm just happy on life after surviving a visit to two of Britain's spookiest locations last week.
Yes, you went on your adventure, and you were saying that you had something to report.
We saw a UFO.
Holy shit! Tell me more.
So it was Thursday evening, and we got this beautiful guest house in the small sort of offshot of Berwick, which is called Spittal. So it's literally like a mile away. And we were on a seafront guest house. So we got a beautiful room, big windows. We were literally about 100 yards from the beach. From where we were. Big windows, two reclining chairs, which I didn't realise was a reclining chair until I thought I broke it. And I went, and then the bottom flew up and I went, so it's supposed to do this. So we were just sat there, just watching the sea, and I downloaded a ship tracker because we're sad like that. And we're like, oh, look at that ship, that's from Liberia. Oh, look, that's come from Portugal. Where's it going? Oh, it's gonna Glasgow. Brilliant. And so while we were doing that, we were taking it in and just thinking, oh, this is marvellous. We could hear the sea. Beautiful. You didn't do anything else for a couple of hours. And we were pointing out, and I said, oh, look, the stars are there and whatever. And there was one particular star, we were looking at it, and oh, yeah, that's beautiful. And then all of a sudden, this bright white ball of light just appeared directly underneath it. And so at first, I thought, is it a very bright star? And the cloud has gone. But it was travelling under the star. You could see it moving. So I said, right, quick, turn the light off. So Julie got up, ran to turn the light off and grab the phones because we'd left them on the bed. And by the time she'd come back, it just went boop and disappeared, vanished. As soon as it knew we were talking, it was almost like we started going, oh my God, look at that. And as soon as we said that, it just disappeared. It was there for, 8-9 seconds.
Son of a bitch.
Wasn't a satellite, wasn't a plane, because I've got all these trackers on my phone these days. Got to rule them out.
No, that's
Wasn't
fair.
the moon, Wasn't a star. Stars don't move. Wasn't a comet. It was too slow for a comet or a meteor or a shooting star. And it was a great big, quite noticeable white ball of light. Wasn't flashing or anything. It just looked like a big, bright, white ball of light. And it went.
I'll be damned. Well, that is cool as hell.
Yeah, so, I didn't see any ghosts anywhere else or anything at Chillingham and Lindisfarne, because we took an impromptu visit to Lindisfarne the following day.
Okay. I don't know the area.
So Lindisfarne is an island off the coast of the northeast of England. You basically can only get there twice a day when the tide goes out, because the road to Lindisfarne is under the North Sea.
Oh, okay.
So we drove over first thing in the morning about 9:15, because Julie lived on Lindisfarne for a bit.
Oh, cool.
Where she met Dan Aykroyd, strangely enough, 25 years ago,
Right.
asking for extra honey in the restaurant she worked at. And also the cast of Cold Feet, if you're aware of that programme. Lots of middle-aged British people will know what I'm talking about. Some may start crying at the merry mention of that romantic comedy drama, shall we say. So yeah, we went there, and obviously Lindisfarne is essentially the starting point in Britain of the Viking Age, because the Vikings turned up, slaughtered all the monks, stole all the gold from the monastery, and ransacked and pillaged the area. So on the island there's a castle and the remains of the priory, and statues to the saint there, and it's like a little art. It's become quite an artistic hotspot, so people have moved there to become professional artists. There's distilleries there. They make their own mead, their own gin, their own rum. It was marvellous, lovely.
Sounds cool as hell.
And then we thought that'll set us up, and then we went to the most haunted castle in England, which was Chillingham.
And was it the most haunted castle?
It's exactly how I expected a haunted castle to be. It's a remarkable story, because the guy that owns it now, Sir Humphrey Wakefield, well, him and his wife, Chillingham had been abandoned for 50 years. So a family owned it until 1930. And one day they just got up and went, nah, we can't afford to live here anymore. Locked the door, fucked off.
Oh.
And it was left. And so it basically began to collapse. And he turned up in 1980 and he completely brought it all back, rebuilt the whole thing, floors, windows. He went out, auction houses, getting back old tapestries and trying to recreate how the rooms would have looked 400, 500 years ago. It's a remarkable level of restoration when you look at what he's achieved in 45 years. It's incredible. I'm very glad I've knocked it off my bucket list, both places.
No kidding. Well, sadly, on this episode, we're not talking about Chillingham Castle, although I kind of wish we were. On this episode, we are telling stories from the American state of Delaware, the Diamond State. This is a number of items that Luke found, plus a few things that I've managed to locate through old newspapers. And actually, I'm quite happy. We're in between stories. We're going to be sharing segments from a newspaper feature on 13 hauntings around Delaware. So we have 6 stories, and after each story, we will have 2 of these little blurbs that the Wilmington News Journal put together in 2006. So if you're not familiar with Delaware, which I have to admit, I was not. I have been to 36 of the U.S. states. I did not even know where Delaware was. I know. Terrible stuff. One of my many secret shames. I'd like to blame the allergy medicine, but I haven't taken it, so I don't fall asleep on the call like I have in past when I've had allergy attacks.
It could be worse. I was once involved as a bystander and referee in an argument between 2 friends over the fact that Australia wasn't in Europe.
I don't even know what to do with that.
And the reason for it was, well, they speak English, so it must be in Europe. And I was like, what? What are you talking? Even I'm annoyed by that point.
Sometimes people will say something so staggeringly stupid that you just expect reality to crumple in on itself like a used up paper cup. Like you just think that, okay, that person should, if there is a God, he will be sucked screaming into the void right now. Nope, nothing.
Indeed.
We're alone.
Indeed. I felt a bit like Captain Britain when Alan Moore wrote it. I have to say, I felt like my atoms were being scattered across the universe.
Well, before we scatter our atoms across the great state of Delaware, we have to thank our patrons.
This one's for the patrons.
Patrons, we could not do what we do without you. So thank you. Thank you, thank you. For real, guys, every single person who downloads the Ghost Story Guys, you help make us who we are. but people who support the show financially are the true MVPs. Without you guys, this great machine would not keep going, and so we are eternally grateful to each and every one of you. And while we'd like to thank all of our subscribers, we would especially like to thank our latest ones. They are
Carrie
and Paul R. Again, guys, thank you so much from the bottom of our terrible hearts. We deeply, deeply appreciate it. And if you would like to have your name read out here, become one of the bright, shining stars in the Ghost Story Guys sky, become a friend of the cabin by clicking the link in the show notes or heading to patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. That's patreon.com/ghoststoryguys, or by clicking the link in the show notes. All right, Paul, I'm going to go blow my nose, and when I come back, be ready to be aware. Be Delaware.
Hey! Pop Pop's house. Growing up being told there were no such thing as ghosts, Pop Pop's house proved us all wrong. I was 17 when we moved into Pop Pop's house. He died about 3 years prior. I loved him and missed him dearly. I cried for years over him. It made it harder to deal with his death, looking over all his belongings and knowing he had lived there for over 50 years. My sister was 12 and my brother was 10, and we all had our own rooms there. My sister chose my dad's old bedroom, which she was excited about because we loved our dad. She slept in there for about 3 months, and then suddenly she was downstairs sleeping on the couch. I asked her why she didn't sleep in Daddy's room anymore. She flat out told me that she was going up the stairs and heard a man and woman laughing in her room. We made fun of her and called her crazy. A few months later, I was in my room at the top of the stairs. I was putting my clothes away and I heard a male voice say, "What are you doing?" Now my brother, being a jokester, and my dad never coming upstairs, I had my back to the door and told my brother to get out of my room. When I turned around, it was dark and no one was there. I was petrified. I threw my clothes on the floor, locked the door and went to bed, and I didn't move all night. I told my brother a few months later, and of course, I was labelled nuts like my sister, but my brother eventually got his payback. A little while later, my brother and his friend were playing football in the side yard. They were at least 30 feet from each other when they heard a woman say, "What are you doing?" They both came inside and were quite terrified. They told me what happened and finally acknowledged what my sister and I had experienced was real. It took us a long time, but I told my dad what had been happening. He never denied seeing or hearing things there. The most outstanding thing was that he saw a ghostly white horse run through the backyard when he was a boy. He told his parents about this and they told him he was sick and that he needed to go to bed. I was so glad he understood us and didn't tease or make fun of us. After my dad passed away, my sister told me that the house shook violently and they heard the sound of a train coming through. My great-grandparents ran a train station that was right in front of the house in the late 1800s. The tracks were gone when my dad was a boy, but my sister said she smelt coal a lot outside. When my dad died, my mother turned off all the utility in the house, such as the phone. My dad had his own phone because of the dial-up internet. I stood outside the window where he worked on the computer. The phone was turned off. Then I heard the phone ringing. I went back in and checked for a dial tone, but there was no sound at all. I thought maybe I'd just heard the neighbour's phone. Months later, both my mum and my sister had heard the same noise. We call it the ghost phone. My mum had to sell the house back in 2010. It had been built by our family over 100 years ago, and my siblings and I were devastated. The new owners burnt it down, but in my mind it's still there, our childhood getaway, jumping off the porch and exploring the yard, and no one can ever burn that down. I still have a key on my keyring to the back door of that house, and I call it the key to a ghost house. Well, I hope they burnt it down by accident. That seems a bit severe.
Just reduce it to ashes like a Star Wars villain.
Maybe they were trying to burn the ghosts out. Who knows?
But they do things differently in Delaware.
It's all that sea air, I think.
Until today, I didn't even know it was on the water.
If it was squeezed any more, it'd be Atlantis.
It's a very small state. Not that size is everything, as I keep contending.
They should call it the Squish'em state.
You know, something tells me that the ego of a state that calls itself either the first state or the diamond state is not going to allow for the Squish'em state. I was reminded of something today. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I was reminded of something today. I've been going to a new coffee shop. It's a little bit closer to my house. And I got talking today when I placed my order. The barista asked about my tattoos. And it occurred to me, I don't think much about them, right? They're just kind of there. I was reminded, I used to work in a building that had a lot of security. It was a very secure building. You couldn't get in without a pass. You couldn't go anywhere. The pass didn't let you go. And we had a cafeteria. So every day when I was working there, I would go to this cafeteria and either just have a coffee or shoot the shit with some of the other people from where I was working. And there was a young woman who worked there, and she was very friendly. We got along very well. But I noticed one day she was wearing a short sleeve shirt. She had a tattoo on her forearm, and it was the emblem from the cover of Leonard Cohen's. It's the album after I'm Your Man. But anyways. It's like a distinctive, I think it's like a heart with two birds on either side of it. But it was just that. And I commented on it. I said, that's Leonard Cohen, right? She goes, oh shit, yeah. She was surprised that I recognized it. So we talked about that for a minute, about how much we both enjoyed that album. And she said, oh, I think it was like, well, thanks, Brennan. She was kind of pointed to my name tag. And I said, oh yeah, no problem. And I realized she didn't have a name tag. And I said, I don't know your name. And she goes, oh, I can't tell you. Secret. And I said, okay. I said, that's fine. But I said, from now on, I'm going to call you Stanislaus. And she stopped and she goes, Stanislaus was my grandfather's name. How'd you know that? Well, I guess that's the end of these conversations.
Woo!
Yeah. And that was it. That was the last time we ever had a chat, I think, whatever it was. With my patented Brennan Store method, I creeped her out just enough to end any future conversations.
You must have been channeling the spirit of Sylvia Brown.
No, because I was right about something.
Oh, that's very harsh.
One might say not harsh enough. One might say that anything short of a Macho Man Randy Savage-style elbow drop from a banyan tree might not be enough for the ghost of Sylvia Brown.
Yes, that was true. When someone mentioned it on the Facebook page, I wrote a message and then I deleted it because I realised it was probably the most vitriolic rant I'd ever committed on our group's page. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. So I toned it down a touch and just called her a bastard.
Which, again, I don't know if there's any amount of vitriol that would have been too much. Again, she's one of the few kind of big name psychics I've seen, like live. I had the misfortune, I guess, of seeing a live performance in Victoria. It was one of the most shameful things I've ever seen. Just this woman who clearly did not give a fuck, completely dismissing these tearful women. It was horrifying. And I think one of the folks in the Facebook group pointed out this one very famous case where she said a young lady was passed and she was in fact being held captive. And then she did the opposite for a case that's very well known to Victorians, the disappearance of Michael Dunahee. And she said, oh, he's out there somewhere. And the podcast Island Crime just did an update on the Michael Dunahee case. And it seems pretty clear he was, I don't like to say this about a kid, but it seems pretty clear he was no longer with us within a couple days of that disappearance, maybe even the day of the disappearance. And so she, again, just got everything wrong in a way that was almost scientifically calculated to cause as much hurt as possible. I don't think she did it because I don't think she's smart enough to scientifically calculate fucking anything. But she just had the opposite of Midas. She had the black touch.
Well, to be fair, to be consistently wrong is a skill in itself.
This is true. Yep, this is true.
Maybe that was a psychic power. You just took the opposite of what she said, and it was right.
This is like the guy I know who keeps dreaming about almost the right lottery numbers. He never gets the right ones, but he always dreams very, very close to the right ones. And I assume this is like generational punishment for something his grandfather did.
Yes. Well, I mean, I must admit, I must have struck a chord with you because you still got your T-shirt that you're wearing from the gig.
My Sylvia Brown T-shirt? Yeah.
Sylvia is my queen.
Yeah, God help us. All right, well, we're going to leave behind the ghost of Sylvia Brown, hopefully forever. And we're going to share 2 of these haunted locations from around Delaware again. This comes from the October 11th, 2006 edition of the Wilmington News Journal. I'm going to read number 1, and Paul is going to read haunt number 2. Haunt 1, Fort Delaware. It's time for a quick lesson for those of you not lucky enough to take a field trip to Fort Delaware in elementary school. Fort Delaware sits on Pea Patch Island, just off Delaware City. It was built in 1848, and though it was never attacked, served as a military fort until 1943 when it was decommissioned. At one point, there were over 16,000 people and prisoners on the tiny island. There aren't any people left living in Fort Delaware, just the ghosts. One of those lost souls is a woman. We don't know her name, but she is one of the civilians who lived in the fort and acted as a cook for one of the officers. George Contant, the historical manager of Fort Delaware, tells the tale. A group of historical interpreters were working in the kitchen one day about 15 years ago, reenacting a day in the life of a kitchen worker at the fort. The women were working at the stove when they saw someone they didn't recognize dressed in period clothes. She walked to the stove, looked in some pots and at the arrangements on the table, smiled at the interpreters, turned around, and walked straight through the wall next to the pantry. Since that incident, ghost hunters have measured that corner as a cold spot. A portal to another dimension. That's obviously not in the article, I'm just being an asshole. About 6 years ago, a camera crew went to the fort to film a segment to run with an Addams Family marathon. Oh, Jesus. It was a different time. One cameraman stayed in the kitchen to shoot some extra footage while the rest of the group moved on. He went into the pantry and heard a woman's voice telling him to get out. He did, and when he came back a few years later to film another segment, he wouldn't go into the pantry. Interpreters have also had things move around on them. One woman was sewing and dropped her needle, but since she was rushing for the last boat out, she decided to just look for it in the morning. She was the first person back the next day, and when she went into the room where she was sewing, a piece of fabric was sitting on her table, her threaded needle in it. Other interpreters reported spoons being moved in the kitchen, and once someone moved a wooden spoon off the hot stove before it caught fire. Other visitors report seeing General Archer, a prisoner captured at Gettysburg who had plans to take over the fort. After those plans were foiled, he was thrown into a powder magazine for the summer. A powder magazine is completely dark, with only thin slits in the brick walls to let air in. He was released, but after he died, his spirit came back to haunt the magazine. Daniel Citron, the lead historical interpreter at Fort Delaware, said he and 2 other guys were putting things away for the season when they heard a little girl giggling. They were the only people on the island. There weren't any children. And I gotta say, man, if I'm this General Archer guy, and I've been imprisoned in a fucking powder magazine, the last thing I'm going to do when I die is go back there. Unless he was autistic and he's like, no, I like the quiet, which in that case I get.
I love the smell of powder.
That's it. I find it calming. I've done some weird shit. You know, if I find a nice clean bathroom with a nice tiled floor, sometimes you just want to lie on it in the dark. I get it. Don't give me that look.
It's been a long time since I've laid on a bathroom floor.
Right about now, RFK Jr.'s picked up the bat phone. He's like, find him.
He can't find me.
No, it's not you he's looking for. You're not the one lying on the floor of bathrooms because he finds it comforting.
No, I'm on the ceiling watching him.
All right, read number 2, you beautiful bald bastard.
Haunt 2, the Headless Horseman of Welsh Tract Road. Next time you're getting some chicken and garlic potatoes at the Boston Market on Route 896 in Newark, keep your eyes peeled. You're in the Headless Horseman of Welsh Tract Road's territory. During the Battle of Coucher's Bridge during the Revolutionary War, part of the battle took place where the Boston Market stands now, all the way down Welsh Tract Road to the church. A 16-year-old volunteer named Charlie Miller was riding through the cemetery during the battle. Just as he passed the church, a cannonball took off his head, kept going, and knocked a hole in the wall of the church. Charlie was a brave volunteer and continued to soldier on as the Headless Horseman. The night before the Battle of Chad's Ford, snipers lined up to shoot George Washington. Those snipers never got a shot off, and the next morning were found headless. Charlie was also responsible for the 38 headless soldiers found at Valley Forge. He still rides around the area where he lost his head, and if you go to the church, you can see where the cannonball that took Charlie's head went through it. That sounds delightful, doesn't it?
Paul, I nearly died when you said Cooch's Bridge. My head snapped back so fast, my headphones pulled out of my ear. It was fumbling for them while laughing, while wheezing because of I literally nearly died.
Have you never investigated Cooch's Bridge?
No, it's a myth. It's a myth.
See, that's the thing about transatlantic colloquialisms. Sometimes they have no relevance in the United Kingdom, and that's one of them, even though I know exactly what it refers to.
I remember when I was just before we go to the next story, when I was in New Orleans the first time, and I did the fan boat tour. The dude who picked me up was born and bred Louisiana, and I was explaining to him that I had couch surfed Louisiana, but my Canadian accent was much more pronounced then. And so he just kept looking at me going, "Cooch surfing? Cooch surfing? Cooch surfing? No, couch. Oh, that doesn't sound like nearly as much fun. Like, all right, calm down."
Yeah, that's a bit strange. I was watching a documentary the other day about the time there were 3 serial killers running around Louisiana at the same time.
Only 3? That seems low for Louisiana.
Strange that they were all active at the same time, and they all had a different modus operandi and a different victim.
Really? What era was this?
80s, 90s, noughties.
No shit.
You got Derek Todd Lee, who attacked women in their own homes and murdered them. You had Ronald Dominique? Which is just really strange. There's a lot of that story that doesn't make sense. He wasn't the most attractive man to look at, shall we say, and he was gay, and obviously he found it hard to meet men. And this is where the story doesn't make sense to me, right? But I'm going to tell you what he told the cops, and they've just bought it for some reason, right? Because most of the people he killed were other gay men, right? And so he allegedly enticed them to coming back with him. He'd pick them up through an advert, which would basically like a swingers advert, saying, "Oh, my wife is scared of men, and so she wants me to go out to find men for her to have sex with." And so he would bring them back to his trailer, and then he would say to them, "Oh, well, I've got to tie you to this chair so my wife can have sex with you." Which straight away I'm thinking, well, hang on, if they're gay men, this is going to take a lot longer than I think anybody thinks here, buddy. And then he would strangle them from behind, apparently. And only him and one other person claimed that this is the reason they ended up there. However, the guy that escaped and said, "No, I'm not doing this," and he went, "Oh, okay, no problem," took him back. He was straight, but everybody else he killed was gay. So why would a gay man be interested in going back to somebody's house to have sex with their wife?
This is all very reminiscent. This goes right back to the whole pop thing, which always makes me think of Arrested Development. This reminds me of the gag about the straight bait videos from season 4, where they, she's like, "Oh, you can have sex with me, but you have to have sex with my husband first," or whatever,
So yeah, and then the other guy who I can't remember, Sean Gillis, and he targeted ladies of the night.
Oh, okay.
And he was just an idiot. But it was him, ironically, that alerted the authorities to the fact that there was somebody else killing people, because he said, "Oh yeah, one night I was trolling the streets and I got somebody and we were in a car park, and then I saw another guy and we locked eyes, and I knew straight away he's the other serial killer you're after. Big black guy. He's the one you should be really looking for, because he's worse than I am." And he was right. It was.
Oh.
He basically fingered Derek Todd Lee.
Okay.
But yeah, so they were all at it at the same time. They're all different types of men. One was a gay man, one was a white guy killing working girls, and the other guy was just a break and enter and attack guy. So they were all very different, very strange, and they were all at it at the same time.
Louisiana, man.
What they're putting in that catfish, man.
Last piece of advice before we go to the next story, folks. Never let anyone tie you up unless you know and trust them. Do not let someone tie you up on a first date. That's some free advice from Rand and Paul. We're not going to tell you why we know this.
Well, if only you told me that 25 years ago.
I'm here now. We're here for the next young Paul to stop him from ending up a podcaster. 13 curves. In Sussex County, Delaware, there is a road, 13 curves. This is near the Broadkill River and Slaughter Beach. Yeah, I know, great names, right? They were named that for a reason. Yeah, I doubt that. Rumor has it the road has 13 curves because it goes around Indian burial grounds and is said to be haunted. These are 90-degree curves. People around here tend to stay off it after dark. Anyway, on the home from Philly on the 13th of September, 2017, my daughter and her friend wanted to go down the road on the way home. They thought it would be fun. 13 curves on the 13th. Of course, I said okay. It was around 7:38 p.m. when we arrived. That's when it all started. I've been down that road before, so I know how to get to it. It took me 5 to 10 minutes to find it. I thought that's odd. When we found it, it got ice cold to the point I had to put the heat on. Okay, no big deal. Coming up to the first curve, I looked in the mirror and thought, where did that car come from? There hasn't been a driveway or street for about 3/4 of a mile, but he's going so fast. I looked back at the road, then back at the mirror, and the distance between us was cut in half. This person is going to crash, I said to my daughter. Again, I looked back at the road, back to my mirror, and the headlights were at my bumper. How fast does this guy want me to go? Again, I looked at the road, back in the mirror. Where did he go? If he turned off, surely we would have seen headlights somewhere. It was pitch black. No streetlights anywhere on this road. On the right were cornfields. On the left, trees and a salt marsh. Crap, he crashed. We turned around with nothing to show from where he went. Okay, time to go. Just then, 3 mists traveled in opposite directions in front of the car. 2 right, 1 left. Okay, time to get out of here. But I couldn't see out of the windshield. It wouldn't clear with the wipers and fluid. The more I used the wipers, the worse it got. Okay, now we were freaking out. We finally got out of that, and it took us 15 minutes to get out of the area. But no matter which way we went, we ended up back at 13 curves. Now, mind you, I don't ever get lost, so my daughter pulled out her GPS. It kept taking us back to 13 curves. I finally found an area I knew and started driving back to the highway, or so I thought. Guess where we ended up? Yep, 13 curves. Once again, back to the GPS. We got on the road out to the highway, and it said we're going back to 13 curves, but I just had a feeling that if we kept going straight, yes, we were back on the highway. Back on the highway, my daughter's friend asked, "Did you see those people?" And my daughter finished with saying, "Standing on the rock watching us go by, yes." They were both freaked out. I didn't see anyone. That was my second and last trip down that road. The whole ordeal took about 30 minutes for something that should have taken 5. Now I know and understand why people stay off it at night. All right, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I think that's bullshit. I think it's obviously bullshit. I had a hard time even finishing it, but I included it because I am so interested in this particular trope of, and it seems to be a very American trope. Now, it could be, Paul, you would know better than I would, but like, for example, I just finished, today I'm putting the last touches on volume 5, the audiobook for These Haunted Times for Ruth. And there are so many stories in there of these haunted roads where a car is said to like come up right behind you and then disappear disappear out of nowhere. And like she mentions Rainbow Road. I'm familiar with one from New York State called Buckout Road. There's so many, and I know there's a 2, but there are many, many, many stories like this, and they all follow the same pattern. And I can't figure out if it's just lazy American myth making, because obviously like 13 curves, this is probably something people believe is real. And there may even be a road which has some curves, probably not fucking 13. But I think it's really interesting that this is a motif that keeps coming up in American folklore.
Yeah, we don't have many. I can think of probably one or two, if that, of ghost cars that chase people and then vanish.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a... Even going... Like, I just saw today that they're remaking Urban Legend.
Thank God.
I Will Fight You. I like that movie.
I don't remember much about it, to be honest.
I mean, I think Jared Leto dies, so, it's not all bad news.
Right, I'm in.
But even that, it's got the same idea, right? The idea that you're driving towards someone and their headlights, like you flash your brights or something, and then they run you off the road. And it's all this, again, very car-centric kind of homicidal maniac shit, which, again, maybe because America just has so much more car culture than anywhere else. Because obviously in Canada, we drive great distances too, but I feel like the car is not as much a part of our national identity, even though it is, just as indispensable here by and large, because we don't have, aside from a couple major cities, we don't have great transit and everything is so far apart. But it just, I'm always interested when you see stuff like this, because you always think, well, maybe somewhere back there is a kernel of truth.
Yeah, I think there's clearly some cultural touch point there for it. Because like you say, I think a lot, especially post-war American teen culture, is all car-based for a lot of it. There's lots of people souping their cars up and driving and racing, and songs written about it, Paradise by a Dashboard Light and other such classic songs of the ilk of that nature. So it's ingrained, I think, especially in that sort of post-war generation's DNA, I would imagine, and I would imagine it's part of that. It'd be interesting to see when the first ones appear.
Yeah. If anyone out there knows, if we have any sort of sociologists or folklorists in the crowd, let us know. Be very curious to know when this stuff kind of first enters the sort of the popular consciousness. Again, I just think it's really funny how lazy everyone is, because it's either cultists or demon cars, or both if you're feeling really sassy. But it's always in the woods. It always involves people in robes, usually again Satanists, and phantom cars for some reason or another.
It is. I heard one of those exact stories about somewhere on an episode of Monsters Among Us several years ago, and that was one of them where they were chased away by cultists in robes. Yeah.
I mean, I think on our Pittsburgh episode, we had one like that. Someone, but there's like a covered bridge or something. There's allegedly a bunch of guys in cult robes. I mean, I do kind of wonder if it's just sort of like the boogeyman in the cultural consciousness at the time, So like we're in the 80s, it was satanic panics. So we're scared of cultists. There's cultists everywhere. In the 50s, like we're terrified of teenagers because, I don't know, rock and roll music and hoop skirts are scary. Kind of makes you wonder if next we're going to hear stories about people being chased down dark roads by the singular they pronoun. Honestly, I'm almost afraid to make that joke because I think there are people out there who actually believe that. So, actually, this
what
is
ain't Cletus's eyes?
This is tangentially related. So, I've come to the conclusion that anyone who actually wants to go viral has some kind of brain damage. And I'll tell you why. Because I was at the gym the other day, and I noticed a guy in the locker room had a T-shirt that said, "This means war," on the back. I didn't see exactly what it was advertising. I've since been informed that it's this one supplement brand that actually makes pretty good stuff. But the point is, I was like, that's a very aggressive shirt. And so I put out I posted something on Threads and Blue Sky. I put the same thing out on both platforms because I want to see what the difference in reaction would be. And essentially I said, at this point, I've been lifting weights for 20 years and still can't wrap my head around gym culture. There's a guy in here wearing a supplement tee that says, "This means war." War? We're lifting heavy stuff and putting it back down again because our dads didn't love us, my guy. Maybe try therapy. And again, I'm having a laugh. Wear whatever. I wear a gun store T-shirt to the gym because I got it for free. So I go to the gym sometimes with a fucking shirt that has an AK-47 on it. So I'm not exactly, clean in all this. So clearly, this is a joke. This is not meant to be taken literally. It did numbers on Blue Sky and Threads. It did way more on Threads. And I tell you, Paul, the replies to that message, I used to say if I go missing, it's the good folk who you should be looking at. Now I think you should check the reply to that thread and use that for your list of potential suspects. Man, people got fucking mad at me. And again, I'm kidding. wear whatever the fuck you want to the gym. This is a funny little observation from my goofy brain. Oh no, they swooped down out of the trees like howler monkeys. It was madness. And I thought, who wants this? Who wants this kind of, why would anyone want to go viral? This sounds like the dumbest thing in the world.
You made Brad so angry he spat out his supplement, typed feverishly with his fat fingers.
You're not wrong. There are people, attacking my weight, my looks, oh man, I didn't read most of it because who gives a shit? They're a bunch of dickless losers. But I just like, wow, you've just taken this to heart. Because to me, there's nothing that says I'm balanced like typing "the gym is my therapy" in all caps to a stranger in response to a joke on the internet. I don't think it's working, fella. I don't think it's working.
60 edge off the steroids.
Yeah. No. I'm feeling like maybe it doesn't.
Oh, I'm just going to have some PCP, take the edge off.
Oh, man.
Woo!
It's funny. Someone once asked me, like, do you take steroids? Because if I'm really working out a lot, less so now as I get older, but when I was younger, I developed muscle very quickly. And the answer is always no, because I don't need something destabilizing my mood further. But there's this doctor I follow on YouTube. He's a bodybuilding guru, whatever. A lot of interesting information. Been very valuable for me as I kind of change up the way I lift as I get older. But he takes gear, and he's very open about it. And he said, and bear in mind, this is a really intelligent guy, very funny guy too, actually. And, well, sometimes. But he's like, oh yeah, no, when I'm on the gear, all I think about is violence. Oh, fantastic. Well, great. Good for you. It's shortening your lifespan and turning you into some kind of monster.
I eat puppies.
Yeah. And I think like Liver King, and we're gonna get to the Delaware bit here in a sec, but like the Liver King, when he finally accidentally admitted to taking $15,000 worth of gear every month, no wonder the guy's skin is red. He must be just in a constant state of rage. One, from being the Liver King, and two, just the pure testosterone coursing through his veins.
Are you sure this wasn't Thunderbolt Ross?
Liver King wishes he was Thunderbolt Ross. All right, so this is part 2 of our 13 haunted spots around Delaware. Again, this is from, I don't have to tell you again, you're not tuning in. This isn't a fucking radio station. Sometimes I get confused. Just in case you're tuning into this podcast that you have to download. No, I'm sorry, guys. All right, so haunt 3 is Patty Cannon's house. Patty Cannon was a 6-foot, 230-pound murderess. She used to take on boarders in her house, but the boarders would mysteriously disappear during the night. Legend was that she would open a secret bookcase, drag the boarders through and kill them, then dump them in the basement. She also ran a slave trade, Jesus Christ, kidnapping free slaves and selling them back into slavery. By all accounts, she was not a nice woman. No fucking shit, guys.
That's the fucking understatement of the year.
Yeah, no kidding, right? It's like, oh, this is my pen pal, Elizabeth Bathory. And just the concept of cancer. Anyways, her house is in Reliance, Maryland, and almost straddles the Delaware-Maryland line. People used to report her to the police, but if she saw a Maryland sheriff coming, she'd just walk over the line into Delaware. I don't think that's how that works, but whatever. What the fuck? I read that last story. I guess I can't bitch about this. Finally, someone found a body in her basement and took her in. This does not speak well of the law enforcement in this area. Like, well, this woman runs like a startled squirrel every time they turn up, and all her boarders never fucking check out. Whoa, but cops hate this one weird trick.
Click the link now.
Like and subscribe. It was going to be a big trial. All the town turned out to watch, but Patty Cannon killed herself before the trial started. She was left in a pauper's grave and her skull was later stolen. It's in the library in Dover now, but Patty Cannon's ghost still haunts her house, perhaps searching for her lost head. They should send the different parts of her body to the different corners of the country like William fucking Wallace. That was an adventure.
There used to be a brothel somewhere that was built on train lines that they used to push into a different state. Because prostitution was legal there. I can't remember where it is, but it's a very famous case.
If you remember, tell me for my friend.
And they would push it. I can't remember if it's Arizona, New Mexico, that kind of area. And they just push it over the state line.
This is why we need high-speed rail.
So, haunt number 4 is the Lewes Ferry Terminal. If you've ever parked your car in Lewes to take the ferry over to Cape May, your car was sitting on a burial ground. That's right. In 1964, they needed a parking lot for the ferry in Delaware, so they paved right over the unknown sailor's graveyard. Brilliant. The historical marker behind the gift shop is the only indication that the dead soldiers lie beneath the blacktop. There are stories of a haunted copier toner forming the shape of a monk, sightings of a woman scrubbing the floor when there's no cleaning crew on the premises, and one woman feeling like there's an arm holding her down.
They were reaching for that one. Jesus Christ. And there's a Virgin Mary on a piece of toast.
Why would a monk be there, not a sailor?
There's a lot of unresolved questions in this one.
Well, it's always nice to respect the lost, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you for your service. Here's a mass grave and a plaque. I mean, that sounds about right. I know a guy who can't get health insurance despite the fact he served in the U.S. military, so this checks out. You had your parade. What else do you want from us? Ongoing care for the injuries you sustained while defending your country? Oh, we're not going to help you with that. Absolutely not. All right, well, you know what's not shameful? This next ad break, because we love capitalism here at the Ghost Story Guys, at least when it works for us. If you become a patron or an Apple Podcast subscriber, you don't have to listen to these. Patreon.com/ghostsstory.
You're protecting us from capitalism.
That's it. Think of that. You are a bulwark against capitalism. I should have thought of this a long time ago.
Consider yourself a Che Guevara.
Anyways, here's the ads.
The Man in the Hotel Room. This happened about 9 or 10 years ago, and it's something I've never figured out, and maybe something I'll never figure out, but it's stuck with me all this time. Let me preface this by saying I get sleep paralysis. I've had more instances of sleep paralysis than I can count, but I'd say an average of around 4 times a year for the past 30 years. Some years it's more often, some years it's less. But by the time this experience occurred, I was well versed enough to be able to identify when it's happening and to be able to pull myself out of it, because I have my own method. Generally, when I get an attack of sleep paralysis, I can hear everything around me, but I can't move or make a noise. I've never seen the old hag, and only once have I seen the man with the wide-brimmed hat, and he had red eyes when I saw him. And yes, he was pushing down on my chest. Not cool, not fun, and I never want that to happen again. But I also knew he wasn't real as it was happening. So about 1% of the time I've had a visual hallucination. Normally it's just I can't move or speak, I can hear everything around me, and somehow see the room even though my eyes are shut. But this, it didn't fit the mould of sleep paralysis, at least not in a way that I've ever experienced it, and that's why it's bothered me so much then, and it still bothers me now. My son was young at the time, maybe around 5 or 6. My then husband, now ex, and I drove to visit grandmother for Christmas. She lives around 100 miles away from me. She's 2 extra bedrooms, but other family members scooped up the extra rooms before we could. My husband and I rented a hotel room a few miles from her house. It was something like a Best Western or a Holiday Inn. If I had to guess, I'd say at the time it was probably less than 10 years old. We checked into our hotel room quickly, dropped our stuff off, and went straight to my grandmother's house. We had Christmas dinner with the family. I don't think I'd had any alcohol at all. If I did, it was maybe just a glass of wine. And it was a long drive down to her house, 2 hours at least, and then an eventful evening, so we were beat. We left her house probably around 9 p.m. and headed back to our hotel room. We drove around for an extra 20 minutes trying to get our cranky son back to sleep, which made me even more exhausted. The exhaustion is the thing that had me thinking that maybe this was sleep paralysis, because that usually triggers it for me. But again, what happened next is like nothing I've experienced before or since. The layout of the room is that the hotel door opened up into a little hallway, and directly to the left is the bathroom with a tiny closet next to it. Moving just past the hallway The wall on the left turned 90 degrees and the beds were also to the left. To the right, you could follow the wall straight to the corner. There was a dresser along that wall, and in that corner was an armchair. From that corner, follow the wall and there was a window facing the parking lot, and in the next corner there was another armchair, maybe 3 feet from the head of one of the queen beds. This is where my husband and I slept. So we're exhausted. My son had fallen asleep in the car, and I tucked him in and very quickly got changed and into bed. My husband was in bed only moments later, and I shut the lights off. Before I fell asleep, I observed that the light from the parking lot peeked in over and around the side of the window curtain. It was brighter than I would have imagined with the curtains drawn, but I was too exhausted for it to bother me, and I passed out quickly. Sometime in the middle of the night, I hear the click of a door handle turning, the lever kind. I was alarmed, but my body was still heavy with sleep, and I'm also facing the direction of the door. I watch as the orange light from the hotel hallway slides across the wall opposite of me, and then slowly disappeared as the door closes again, quietly. I felt like I was passing in and out of sleep, so the sight of this almost had a strobing effect. A young man wearing medium blue baggy jeans and no shirt walks past the end of our beds. At this point I'm more alert, but laying in bed trying to figure out if this is real or not, because it's so vivid, but I also have this feeling I was passing in and out of consciousness still. From the moment I heard the click of the door handle, I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm still so tired. I want to get up. I want to scream, but I can't tell what's holding me in bed. Is it fear or exhaustion? At this point, the man is behind me. I can feel him looking at me, but I'm absolutely terrified to turn over. If I turn over, is it going to spook him and he'll attack my family? Right now I can tell he's not moving, just looking at me. I finally felt alert enough and realised my eyes are closed. What? But I can feel him in the room. It was the scariest thing I've ever done, because I might be facing an attacker in my hotel room. But I force my eyes open and turn over. Nothing. There's no one in the room. My heart's racing. Jesus, that was so real. I look at my husband and he's fast asleep with his back turned to me, snoring gently. My son is asleep. Everything is how it was when I fell asleep. I'm still on my back, looking at the armchair in the corner at the end of the beds with the soft white light of the parking lot falling onto the chair, and I begin to calm down enough to fall back asleep. I can't tell you how much time passed, but it was dark, and then all of a sudden I can see the armchair in the corner of the foot of the bed again, but this time the man that entered the room earlier is now sitting in it. With the light shining from the window, I can see him a little better. It's a soft light, and I can tell that his hair is budged short and it's dark brown. He looks young, around 18 to 25 years old. He's either white with a tan or maybe Hispanic. I can't see his face features too well, but he could be a model. I don't know celebrities well enough to be able to compare him to someone, but he's strong cheekbones, the sort of perfect nose, and a strong jaw. Too dark to see the details, but just his silhouette. He's sitting there, calmly, just staring at me. He doesn't feel threatening or menacing, but I'm still scared out of my mind because there's a guy in my room in the middle of the night sat staring at me. This time the line between asleep and awake is even blurrier in my head. Am I asleep? Are my eyes open? I don't know, but I'm afraid to find out. I can feel my husband asleep next to me, so I decide the best move is to try and discreetly wake my husband. He's still snoring with his back turned to me, but my hand is on the bed next to his back, so I decide to slowly move my hand closer to his back and poke him. Finally I decide, F this, I'm not dealing with this alone anymore, and I turn towards my husband slightly, lift myself on my elbow. This is where I'm sure I'm awake, but before this everything was blurry, and I'm about to grab his arm and shake the hell out of him when I notice the man is no longer sitting in the chair anymore. Now I feel crazy. What's going on? Where is this guy? Is he real or not? I'm so tired, confused, frustrated and scared. This man feels real. The details are so vivid, but as I'm trying to sift through what is reality and what isn't, I realise I think I can only see or feel this guy when I'm asleep. I pray to myself that that's the end of it, And I'm trying to convince myself now that this is just my brain creating an elaborate lucid dream and I'm safe. And it should stop now because this is just a stupid dream and I've realised this. I roll towards my husband, facing his back. I close my eyes and start to drift off to sleep again. I swear it was only a few minutes later, and this time I can't see anything, but I feel the guy looking at me. But this time while sitting in the chair that's 3 feet away from my husband's head. So I open my eyes, and nobody's there. For the rest of the night I probably woke up every hour or so. Every time I fell asleep, I could feel this man's presence in the room. He never tried to hurt us, he just watched us. All night. When I finally saw daylight through the curtains, I got up and woke my husband up and told him we had to leave. I tried not to alarm him or my son. I just got them up and dressed, and I think we were out of that hotel by around 7:30 in the morning. The whole thing had a surreal quality to it, because with the exception of a few distinct moments, it was hard to tell when my eyes were open and when they were closed, when I was fully conscious and when I was maybe semi-conscious. There were parts of it that I could write off as a dream if they weren't so damn vivid. And that whole night, the lingering feeling of being watched, even when I couldn't see him. Every time I recount this incident to myself or someone else, I'm no closer to understanding what happened. I refuse to go back to that hotel, though.
I mean, in fairness, even though that very much seems like normal sleep paralysis, I would also not go back there.
I don't know why, but I feel I've seen that story before.
Oh, really?
Literally within about 2 paragraphs, I thought, I know this story. It's about a young man in a hotel room that stares at her. And it was.
Interesting. Maybe we've told it on the show here.
I don't know. It's just really struck a chord with me. I felt like I'd read it somewhere else.
I mean, we source these online, so very possible you've read it elsewhere. That seems exceedingly likely.
It seems strangely familiar to me. I don't know. Maybe I've punched through time again.
I mean, you do have a knack for this, I will say.
Maybe.
It reminded me of this book I'm reading right now. It's called Raw Dog. It's a road trip book where the author, Jamie Loftus, samples hot dogs from all over America. She drives across America trying all these different sort of legendary hot dogs and also kind of mixes in with talk about competitive hot dog eating and the history of the hot dog and how it's made and things like this. And I'm only about a third of the way through, but one of the very first hotels she stays in, there is very clearly a meth deal happening while her and her boyfriend are checking in. And I just think, yep, I mean, I've had that, not quite that experience, but one close to it. And the only thing scarier than having someone in your room is knowing that same hotel is meth central. And it's very possible that person is actually someone in your room and not just sleep paralysis.
I wouldn't know. Waking up in a crack house is pretty frightening.
I lived in one. Yeah. No, it was. What great.
It's quite startling.
Especially if you didn't start the night there.
No.
Oh, okay.
And I don't do crack. What the fuck am I doing here? What's gone on?
It's like going to a barbecue place and having the sandwich. Why am I here? This doesn't make any sense.
Just having the salad.
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
I'm here for the great conversation, obviously.
See, if you hadn't let that lady tie you up, none of this would happen.
They're in my eyes. They're in my eyes. What are you on about? Can you not see the little men? Yeah, great night.
I've only ever been around that once. And that was enough. I'll never forget the smell. And I said, what is that? And someone went, crack. Oh, cool. I'm going. I'm going to go be somewhere else that's not here. I'm going to go, I don't know, stick my head in a lion's mouth, play Frogger on a busy freeway, anything that's not hanging around crackheads.
Yeah, I once got chatted up by a very attractive young lady, and we were outside and I was having a cigarette, and she said, oh, do you mind if I smoke? And I went, no, of course not. I mean, I'm smoking. What are you on about? And she just pulled out a crack pipe. And I went, okay, I don't think we're going to have this conversation much longer.
So I can only tell part of this story.
It was you.
Surprise! Pull off my wig. Hello!
Old man Smithers.
No, I used to have a customer who'd come into the store, and it was someone I'd worked with as well. And her brother-in-law, her former brother-in-law, ended up getting together with a very beautiful, like a shockingly beautiful young lady. And it was bizarre because this guy was no prize. and she was extraordinarily attractive. And at first, when they first got together, they would come in the store, and of course, he's beaming because he looks like a troll, and she looks like the bride on top of a wedding cake. But then over time, they would come in, and she looked progressively rougher. She was still very beautiful, but there were some miles. The cake had been left out in the rain in MacArthur Park, but he looked haunted. And I eventually ran into my friend who this woman I'd worked with, whose ex-brother-in-law this was. And I said, so what's going on with so-and-so? And she went, oh God. So he got together with her. He was so happy about it. But all she wants to do is have sex and smoke crack. And it's killing him. So be careful what you wish for, folks. All right. Next up on our tour of haunted Delaware, we have Haunt 5, the Rockwood Mansion. The ghosts at Rockwood aren't lonely. There are plenty of spirits around to keep them company. One of the ghosts is believed to be named Mary, one of the last Rendhurst daughters that lived in the house. She lived at Rockwood until she was 100 and died in the mansion. Philip Nord, the museum director at Rockwood, said people smell a lady's perfume and see a woman in the room that was Mary's. The psychics and ghost hunters that frequent Rockwood report the ghosts don't mind people being there, but Mary doesn't particularly like people being in her private space. I'm with you, Mary, I get it. One of the psychics had conversations with several of the ghosts there, Phil said, including a young girl who had been jilted by her boyfriend and an elderly man who didn't know why he was dead. There are also several ghosts who don't live there, but pass through from time to time. Phil said that he was at Rockwood for an evening program once, when he felt like he was hit by a cold, wet cloud. He was spooked. Add that to the apparition, and it sounds like we've got ourselves a ghost. Or several of them. And that kind of reminds me, I actually forgot to bitch about this with that bullshit story I read last, but they said 3 mists. How the fuck can you count separate mists? No. I could easily make out the 3 discrete mists. Get the fuck out of here, Jesus Christ. Write better fiction.
Strangely, that's reminded me when we were wandering around Chillingham, we went in one of the drawing rooms, and the guides there were brilliant. All the staff there were so friendly and polite and nice. It was really good. And we went in the drawing room and we were talking about that, and Julie says, oh, have you ever seen anything? And she says, well, that's the thing about here. He says, you don't really see things. You feel them and you smell them. And she said, actually, a little earlier on, probably about 2 minutes ago, the whole room filled with the smell of lavender, and that's who we prescribed to one of our ghosts, Ethel, I think she said. And she said it was so strong, if it was still here, I'd invite you. You could come under the ropes and take in the aroma, which was a bit sad that we just missed it. But it was quite interesting that everybody we spoke to that worked there didn't sort of tell us it was all full of ghosts and stuff. It was all sort of it all seemed very gentle.
I like that. I honestly, I think that's a way to handle these kinds of things. I think leaning too heavily into the ghost stuff feels crass because, as you and I both know, you can't force it. And then the opposite, you've got, Craigdraw Castle in Victoria, where they just are like, no, this is not a real thing here, even though I've fucking felt spirits there.
Yes, like the lady in our local Tudor hamlet. When I said, oh, what do you know about the White Lady? She says, oh, not that nonsense.
Yeah. Again, going back to Ruth's book, the number of people who take the time to write in and say, well, I've lived here 30 years and I've never had an experience. Who fucking cares?
Precisely. Nobody's keeping count. Calm down. Haunt 6, Turnquist. On Delancey Road, just off Route 40 at the Delaware-Maryland line, is a neighbourhood called Turnquist. In 1963, a plane with 81 passengers was flying over the Maryland-Delaware border when lightning struck the wing and ignited the plane. The plane crashed, and the 81 people all died, and their bodies were scattered all over a field on Delancey Road. Turnquist was built on that field, and residents report many strange happenings, noises and sightings. All that remains of the ground where those bodies fell is a remembrance plaque, right next to the sign for the neighbourhood. Town planners in Delaware don't seem to give a shit, do they?
I was thinking someone's cousin owns a plaque-making business.
Lots of people died here. Let's build something.
We'll honor their memory with this Curves Fitness Center and a Jamba Juice. Cult House Road. Back in high school, we used to go out to the valley and mess around Cult House Road, like I'm sure every Delawarean has. We'd meet at Wendy's, what is now the new Starbucks, on 202 and pile into one or two cars and head out for a ride. Most of the time, it was just a summer drive with the windows down. One time, we were stopped by cops because they were filming that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village, but nothing else ever really happened. One night, one of our older friends was eager to pass down some knowledge to us. He knew of a few places where people used to go out and have secret bonfires. We were feeling like veterans of the valley rides at this point, so we thought we'd try to find where these secret gatherings were. We drove out to the valley in 2 cars, found a little pull-off to park near Colt House Road, and began walking into the woods. There was about 7 of us, so at first we felt safe in numbers, but that feeling didn't last long. The further into the woods we went, the quieter it got. We talked less and less, and the sounds of the road faded until the only sound we heard was our footsteps through the thick brush. It started to feel a little off, and the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. No one wanted to be the one to say they were creeped out, but all of us felt it. It was a strange feeling, like we were being watched. It didn't feel right. Someone or something was aware we were there and shouldn't be. Then we heard a loud and abrupt scream in the direction we were heading. Not close, but too close for comfort. We all stopped dead in our tracks, and then we heard it. And then again we heard it, and again. It was short and high-pitched and sounded like it was getting closer. We stood there panicking because we didn't want to end up running into the darkness and getting lost. But then we heard a crash coming from above us, something falling from the treetops, breaking branches on its way down, heavy enough to make a thud when it hit the ground. We took off. Lucky enough, we made it back to the cars, getting into the same ones we arrived in. We immediately got back on the road, some of us laughing, some of us scared silent. At the time, we didn't know what it was, but now that I'm older, I know that the noise was a fox. If you've never heard one's bark, even if you have, it's horrifying and loud, albeit harmless. But when you're surrounded by darkness in the woods, it has a different effect. I don't know what fell through the trees, but I'm going to guess it was either one of the group members throwing something heavy or a larger dead branch that broke off. I never tried to define it more than that, but the night didn't end there. We started to head back towards 202. We were going to meet at Golden Castle Diner as we usually did after a valley ride. We were starting to calm down now that we had a better feel for our surroundings, but we're still in a remote enough area that there weren't any other cars around than us. The roads were winding and there were no lights. I was in the lead car. Around one of the bends in the road, our friends in the car behind us started to come up on us quick, flashing their high beams and honking their horn at us. We were finally getting to the point where we could all laugh about what just happened, and we could see our friends in the car behind us felt the same. Then they started to come up on the side of us, on the opposite side of the road. The roads were still winding, so this was not a smart idea. After riding our ass and pulling the stunt, we decided to call them, just as we were getting back out to one of the main valley roads. "What the hell are you doing, man? Quit driving like an asshole," someone said. The response was scarier than the woods. "What are you talking about? We're about to be at Golden Castle." We went silent again. In the chaos that happened in the woods, we didn't realize we got to our car last, and they had already taken off. The flashing headlights behind us turned off once we got back out to the main road, as if to usher us away. Whoever it was wanted us out of their territory, and we were happy to oblige. That really put an end to our valley rides for a while. Let me say I do not recommend looking for anything in the valley. It was stupid and dangerous of us to do that. There are strange people doing stranger things out there, and they do not want you around. I've heard of a few people being shot at for trespassing. We were lucky no one got hurt. And I will say, fucking around in the woods like that, you are more likely to end up on like a meth lab than you are a cult house.
Yeah. Well, there's many stories, especially in Oregon and Washington, of unsuspecting hikers and travellers wandering into a illegal growing area and disappearing, aren't there?
I think I told you that story years ago. I was drinking in the bowling alley in Revelstoke, and I got talking to this guy who was a friend of a friend, and he was telling me the story that one time he had been asked to help out at a black market grow during trim season. They basically they needed guys. And the other guy who he was supposed to cover for, he decided he wasn't coming to work. So they needed someone. His buddy said, "Will you help us?" And he said, "Yeah, no problem." But he was out there, he was working. And all of a sudden he heard this guy behind him say, "Don't move. Turn around slowly." So he turned around. This guy was pointing a pump action shotgun at his face. he was one of the managers at this place. He had not been informed they were going to have another guy on staff. So he thought he was there raiding the place. And he said, man, you don't know fear until you're staring down the barrel of a shotgun. He said, your whole world shrinks down to that barrel.
Yeah, it does.
As a survivor of Shotgun Frank.
I can attest to that. Yes. Especially if it's a double-barreled sawn-off shotgun.
That would do it. I mean, I guess if getting shot by one is as bad as getting shot by two, but the fear of it would be substantial.
Character building, I feel.
You know, I've fired shotguns, and I'd rather stay on that side of them if all things are equal.
Yeah, I don't fancy being shot by anything, really.
That's why I always get salty about people who who are irresponsible with guns, because some of these gun dipshits, it's a fetishization thing. They're not responsible with them, and again, those are not fuck around machines. It will end very badly if you do.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of respect, let's pay respect to some more haunted spots in Delaware. Number 7, the Ticking Tomb. In the mid-1700s, Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon were staying in Delaware while they worked on their famous line. Mason was also working on another project, a chronometer, basically the original version of a watch. He'd perfected his invention and wanted to leave to go back to England and collect enough money to be rich for the rest of his life. But he left the chronometer in a tent that he and Dixon had set up and went to get some fresh fish from the fish market. While he was gone, a fatty little kid how the fuck do they know he was fat? That seems very, very specific. I feel very called out by this, is what I think. A fatty little kid crawled into his tent and ate everything he could get his grubby little paws on. Jesus Christ. A fat kid pissed this person off at some point.
I think there's a lot of sort of trauma here in this story.
A lot of plaques and a lot of trauma.
I've probably built a plaque there. Fat kid ate tent.
Well, we're not done yet, so we could find out that's the case. But yeah, according to this, Chunk also ate the chronometer. When Mason realized what happened, he tried to get the chronometer out, but it was too late. The chronometer was... I'm certain that the author was just like, no one's going to keep reading this far down. I'm just going to say whatever bullshit I want. Mason raised a toast that the fatty keep the chronometer with him until the end of time. Jesus Christ! This is 2006? The kid grew up to be a clockmaker. Fuck off, he did.
Yeah, he could shit clocks. Need a new clock? There you are. Look, that's all the bits I've ate. What I do is I eat the parts and then I shit out a clock.
He was buried in the graveyard at the London Tract Church in Landenberg. His grave is a flat marker. We have yet another plaque next to a crumbling heart tombstone. If you lay on the ground and put your head to his tombstone, you can still hear the ticking of Mason's chronometer. Jesus Christ, this is what a terrible episode this is. The stories are just garbage. This is a garbage state full of garbage ghost stories. Holy shit! The fucking Captain Hook.
I invented the clock, but then a kid ate it. Honest.
A fat kid, no less. Have I mentioned he's fat? That fatty, fat little bastard?
I invented the watch, and a child ate it that apparently didn't shit. What goes in comes out, because as far as I'm aware, the body can't digest metal of that magnitude.
Was it you who introduced me to the movie Tiptoes?
No.
Have we talked about the movie Tiptoes?
About Tiptoes. I saw the trailer, and I was like, oh my fucking God.
Yeah, so folks, Tiptoes is a movie where Gary Oldman plays a little person, and it's pretty bad. It's very, very bad. But the people who wrote that movie know nothing about any of that world. They did zero research about any of the causes of dwarfism or what life is like what it's like to live a life with that particular medical, nothing, absolutely nothing. They're just like, Gary Oldman, have him walking around on his knees with shoes stapled to his jeans. We're done. Let's just shoot this fucking thing and move on. And I feel like whoever wrote this newspaper knows nothing about children or the obese. And they're just like, I bet they don't shit. I bet that's why they're so fat. They just don't shit. Again, like I cut this guy off in traffic one day and he's like, fuck him. And he just wrote a whole newspaper article about how mad he was at me, but through the form of like a ghost story.
I suspect that somebody at this newspaper got hold of a copy of old ghost stories and just thought, fuck proofreading it, we'll just copy and paste it all. Because I'm sure it'll be fine. Look, this book's from 1936. I mean, how offensive can it be?
We did a find and replace for the N-word. What else do we got to do here? Holy shit. Well, we have more of these, Sterling. We got to get up to fucking 13, so strap in, folks.
I'm sure there's some latent racism hidden in another one of these stories.
I think it's very generous of you to assume it's hidden.
I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's find out, shall we? In story number 8, Dead Presidents. Ever feel the hairs stand up on the back of your neck while you're sitting at the bar of Dead Presidents? Don't blame the beer. Blame a customer who frequented the tavern in the 1950s. He was a prankster, always playing jokes on the staff and other tavern regulars. You know, the poor prankster didn't get the last laugh, however.
I know, I just read it myself.
He slipped in a puddle of urine whilst in the men's room in the late 60s and died. But he liked the place so much he decided to stick around as a ghost. Tale old as time there. We've all died slipping in a puddle of urine in the toilet. I mean, slipping over, as far as I'm aware, doesn't kill you. There seems to be some pertinent information missing from that story.
Yeah, like there were 6 inches of urine on the floor and he just slowly drowned in it. That's all I can figure. Yeah.
You've heard of dry drowning. Don't go to Delaware.
Delaware, drowning in piss.
We should call it the pissy
This
state.
is the dumbest show we've ever done. Drowning in Piss is my favorite metal band.
Yes. There's a lot missing from some of these stories, like facts, evidence, and reality.
I just love too, like some guy, some prankster, name him. If there is some legend out there who used to tickle people's neck, I'd love to see you do that shit in a bar and get away with it. Come out alive. Yeah, Touchy Tony, who drowned in
he didn't
piss.
slip in the toilet. Big Malk didn't like him tickling his wife's neck and rammed him through the mirror. And then said, oh no, Tickly Tony slipped in some piss again and he's dead.
He died of natural causes.
He was shot 6 times, it's suicide. To the back of the head. This week on Unsolved Mysteries.
We're going to take another ad break. After I apologize for this terrible fucking show, good lord.
Green Man. The setting is my dad's old house that is debatably haunted. It's located in a small one-stoplight town in rural Delaware. It was built in the early 1900s and surely has a long history that I'm not totally versed on. My dad moved here to live and run his business after splitting with my mum when I was 9. Without sounding too stereotypical, his house just had a weird vibe to it. So much so that my dad's girlfriend, who often stayed with him, would get a hotel room when he was out of town on work travelling duty. She claims you would hear the typical haunted noises like footsteps and doors closing on their own. Aside from paranormal activity, it was factually documented that there were 2 degenerate kids who lived with their parents there in the past who were known for being troublemakers and often getting arrested. Before I try and describe the main event of this story, it's worth noting at the time that my dad was a full-blown alcoholic trying to recover. He would tell of agonising nights trying to quit drinking cold turkey, where he would wake up in a delirious sweat hearing what it seemed to be a full-blown party happening in the main room downstairs, with clinking glasses and shouting voices. But when he would open his door, it would all cease. He would also be visited by living and non-living friends of his, who all aimed to help him get better. He'd become fully sober and live another 20-odd years alcohol-free. One night, I'm staying over at his house, and it's when I'm about 9 and sleeping in his bed. He'd just moved in and didn't have my room set up yet. Nothing out of the ordinary so far this night, but I still get goosebumps at this point. We're dead asleep. It's probably around 2 a.m, and I wake up for no apparent reason and look across the bed on my dad's side to see a small translucent being sitting or standing beside, staring at me. I fear sounding off the wagon here, but it looked like a small alien-like being, except it was see-through and sort of emanating a greenish light. It looked away from me and got back to what it appeared to be working away on a computer of sorts. which I couldn't really see because it seemed to be below the mattress line. I didn't know what to think, so I rolled over. I processed what I thought I saw, rationalised it must have been a dream, rubbed my eyes and looked over again, and it was still there looking at their computer screen. At this point I realised I was fully awake and totally unsure of what I was seeing. So I closed my eyes and tried to go to sleep as fast as possible. My dad never stirred and was passed out the entire time, and the being made no noise.
The alien just came by to use the computer. All right, well, let's bring up more Delaware stories, because I don't know.
Good for him.
I doubt that these are going to be better than the ones we're reading, but this one is number 9, Deer Park Tavern. Back in the days, oh, God. Slaves were traded on the porch of the tavern, and some spirits may still linger there. Before it was the Deer Park, it was the St. Patrick's Inn, which burned it down. Edgar Allan Poe visited the inn on December 23rd, 1843. He was trying to get out of his carriage and get up the steps to the inn when he got stuck in the mud and fell. Not just one to get up and brush himself off, Poe put a curse on this building. Oh, Jesus. There it is. There it is. We found it. The lowest point in this entire article. Because apparently Edgar Allan Poe was a fucking warlock. Anyway, so yeah, Edgar Allan Poe put a curse. The curse lingers, and people who have had a little too much to drink have been known to blame their stumbles up and down the stairs on the curse. Boy, they were really struggling to get to 13 for this fucking thing.
Haunted 10. Ghosts at UD. There are several resident ghosts at the University of Delaware. They must have gotten ghost tenure. Struggling already here. A man named Edward Roach was murdered on the steps of the Old College. Old College is the building on Main Street, right across from South College Avenue. People have seen his ghost on the steps there and in the lobby. In Mitchell Hall, a ghost named Elmo rose. Mitchell Hall has an upper level and a tall dome. The story is that Elmo fell from the dome to his death on the floor of Mitchell Hall. Residents of Warner Hall, a girls' dorm, report hearing banging during the night. This could go one of two ways here. There was a girl who lived there who committed suicide and her ghost stayed behind. Now the ghost spends the night banging against a false wall somewhere in the dome. Yeah, that noise, it's a ghost banging. There's nobody in Brenda's room. It's the ghost.
Oh, man. It's just like, if AI had been a thing in 2006, I would say this person just said to AI, generate the worst possible article about ghosts you can.
Here's the thing with things like this. This is what always annoys me. This is when you always find badly written ghost stories. I mean, I bought a couple of books when I was up northeast the other day. One of them, apparently a man starved to death after 4 days. And I just thought, that's fucking bollocks, right? So, and I just went, bollocks. I shouted out loud, reading this book to myself, I went, bollocks. And Julie said, what's wrong? And I explained it to her, and she said, yes, that does sound a little unplausible. And I went, no, it's bollocks, Julie. Bollocks. That's what it is. Some say somebody committed suicide. Well, I'm sure they would have had a fucking record of it, because they would have had to have taken her out of the building, told all her family, she had to probably go to hospital. There would be a record. You can't say in 2006, you know, this is not like we're reading something from 1938 where there's no idea of resource or records, right? You can't just say, oh, such and such happened, and don't say any names, dates or anything. It's just intangible bollocks. I mean, who's Elmo? If somebody called Elmo fell off a fucking roof, everybody would know about that, because surely everybody go, oh, like Elmo of Sesame Street, oh, with people tickling him, oh. And everybody would know. They'd know who fucking Elmo was. They wouldn't think, oh yeah, that sounds right. Why is he on the dome? What's he doing up there?
Stake in the ground. There aren't that many guys in this world named Elmo. When we lose one, we notice.
Exactly. It would be major news.
Oh, God. It reminds me of whenever I Google, I Google kind of famous historical hauntings, and you realize they're all using the same bullshit details. And you just think, well, okay, so this is all lies, because you're all repeating exactly the same facts to me. I was reading something about a haunted location, and people keep calling because they say, oh, there was a lunatic asylum. That's what it was. There was a lunatic asylum, and the doctor was experimenting on the patients. And this person said, no, this has never existed here whatsoever. I don't know where you people keep getting this. And it's the same quality of research.
Yep. Absolutely. It's like all those people who are going about the Winchester house, who basically say, oh yeah, all the ghosts came because of her husband inventing the Winchester rifle, and it was all the ghosts of everybody that was killed by it. So why did she have a fucking shooting range in the house, boys?
Yeah, and why are the houses of people like the Krupp family not haunted to all hell?
Yeah, or like I've noticed recently that people have started claiming that the Valeska house, right, which is one of the most heinous murder cases in 20th century America. I mean, numerous axe murders that were going on there, which I clearly think are very much linked, personally. You could just jump on a train going wherever and murder people and they wouldn't have the first clue, would they? And so now, certain, I'd say paranormal investigators, but essentially bullshit artists, are claiming that it's demons that haunt that house. Not the poor bastards that were murdered in their beds by some maniac. No, it has to be a demon. No, you don't need to elaborate that awful story. What happened there on that night is heinous enough without going down bullshit boulevard and bringing demons into it. Deal with the horror of the reality of what happened. That is all you need. You don't need anything else.
Honestly, man, I think these people just have a spinner, and they just hit it and they spin, and so it's like demons, skinwalkers, whatever the bullshit thing of the moment happens to be. They just, oh no, it was this. That's it. It was a rake this time.
Bummed by an orb.
Yeah. Slender Man was here. It's just embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, when I was doing that research for the show I was on, I guested on a podcast recently, and I did some research, and just looking at some of the YouTube stuff I found, it's just, again, part of it is I think people like being lied to. They respond to this shit. So I to a degree I can't blame them, but at the same time I can, because it's got zero integrity and it's just sad.
Yes, absolutely. It reminds me, a couple of years ago, somebody sent me a video of this UK paranormal investigator who I've never heard of, and watching this particular video I never want to hear of again. And he claimed to have gone to this abandoned house where this guy had murdered his wife and 3 children in the Manchester area, right? And so rather than carry on watching this, I thought, well, I know about horrible things. And that would be, with the amount of crime documentaries and serial killer things that I watch, I would have seen that case. I know I would have, because stuff like that doesn't happen very often here. It does happen, but not that. That would be front page news all over the place. Nothing, absolutely nothing of anything happened in the area that he claimed it had. Couldn't find anything anywhere. And you just think, why would you just create bullshit to promote something? There's enough horrible things that go on without it. I mean, Julie's been watching a series recently called Evil Lives Here, which is quite amusing because there's like 13 seasons of it. I mean, there's evil everywhere, it would seem. This particular series should basically be called I Ignore Red Flags, is what it should be called. Because there's like one woman going, oh yeah, well, when we first started dating, he used to take me to strip bars, and I just thought that was odd, but that's just the way he was. And so they were showing this clip of like this recreation, and she sat next to him looking really disapproving while he's wanging money on stage at these strippers. Right? And I'm thinking, right, at what point do you think, hey, this is the man for me? Right? So then we've got bits with him like hanging the kid's doll from the bed above her and waking her up going, look at your doll's dead, your doll's dead.
What the fuck?
Every night, right, he goes out the house wearing a jet black coat with a gun, and he just says, oh, I'm off for a walk. And he goes for 5 hours and comes back, and she thinks, oh, well, it's just his thing. And I'm like, what's going on here, right? His mum won't allow him to come to the house when she's on her own, right? And she thinks he's a really good catch. He goes away for a weekend, doesn't tell her, he just goes out Friday night, says, I'm just going for a drive, turns up Sunday night, looking exhausted. Where have you been? Oh, my car broke down. What? Hang on. What?
My hands are sure tired from all this strangling. What?
Here's the best one, right? The next door neighbour, the whole street gets locked down, the police have to turn up because the next door neighbour jumps through a bedroom window to escape a man wearing a balaclava, right? What's he got in his wardrobe in a special box? He's got a balaclava, right? So when she says to him, why have you got that in here? He goes, oh, well, it's when I'm cold. And she goes, oh, all right then. Right, hang on. Your next door neighbour, right, has just had to jump out the window, which he didn't mention. It was the daughter that told her. And he went, oh, yeah, she fell out the window. Well, she didn't, because everybody's saying she had to jump because somebody was in her house. You've got a balaclava, which he'd been walking around in the house wearing before the attack happened. Eventually, after something else happened, she goes, I just wasn't sure anymore. Anymore? Fucking hell, love.
Meanwhile, BTK's wife is like, honey, come on.
So, yeah, I ignore red flags. Or, I'm a fucking idiot. They might as well call it, really.
I found a sock full of women's driver's licenses in the bureau, and there's a smell coming from the basement. What do you guys think I should do? The wedding's in an hour.
Typically something you would read on Reddit.
Yeah, exactly.
My husband-to-be has a room in his house that I'm not allowed in, but I've sneaked a look round the door when he opened it, and it seems to be full of trinkets and jewellery.
I often hear anguished cries and pleas for mercy. He watches some weird programs.
He's got a giant picture of Ted Bundy above the fireplace. Should I be worried?
He just likes to strip down and flex in front of a mirror. All right, folks. In the interim between stories, Paul and I made the executive decision that we're not going to bother with the last story, which is probably going to be equally as terrible as some of the ones we've read so far tonight. And so instead, we are going to just finish out this 13 most haunted locations around Delaware, this fabulous piece of journalism that the News Register has brought to us. And I will start us off with number 11, Old New Castle. Old New Castle is riddled with ghosts. There are the ghosts of people who were hung and burned at the stake in front of the courthouse lingering. The most popular and most seen ghost in Old Newcastle is a resident of the Amstel House, Bruce DeLeo, the director of the Newcastle Historical Society, said. Many people tell stories of seeing a woman in blue in the windows of the house when there is no one there. The woman in blue has been seen for more than a century. In the 1940s, a caretaker who lived in the house was interviewed for a newspaper about the woman in blue, and seeing an apparition walking around the house with her. No one is positive who she is, but something must have happened to her there that was strong enough to bring her back to it. Jesus Christ, this is just... The guy's just given up like we have. There's something about Delaware that just does this to you. You're just like, fuck. Maybe he's on allergy medication too. He's like, oh God, just make it end. I don't know, something. There was a newspaper somewhere. All right, one woman named Elizabeth gave birth to a child in the house. The child died after a few days, and Elizabeth died because of complications from the birth within a few weeks. Her husband has a mourning ring made, and inscribed with the words, I mourn thy virtue lost to me. That ring is still on display in the house. Okay, we have one fact. We have an actual proven fact. Another was a woman named Anna Finney, who was engaged to a British officer killed in 1755 in the Battle of the Wilderness outside of Pittsburgh. She was devastated. She was devastated and so grief-stricken that she took to her bed and refused to marry. Her father had other plans and married her off to her cousin, making her Anna Finney. I don't think that's how that would work. I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe that someone's father back then would be like, well, whatever, your property, we're going to marry you off to someone. Because, it was a horror show. But I don't think if you marry someone who's got the same last name as you, you just pile it on. I'm not sure how I don't think that's how that works. I think we're seeing this author like gradually just lose touch with their sanity. They're slowly going mad, and they're just inventing more and more unlikely things in the hopes that you will stop reading so they don't have to finish the article.
If you read it back to front, it's quite an uplifting story about a journalist who rediscovers his love for writing.
I like that version better, because otherwise we're just watching some guy climb into a bottle.
Hey, why is Mike over there with 2 pencils in his eyes? Mike, are you okay? I'm just writing this fucking article about ghosts.
A genie came and showed him the future of journalism, and he's like, fuck it, man, I'm out.
Go on, get back to Finney.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Just Anna Finney, Finn. And then there was another Elizabeth who lived there and watched as her husband and 2 of her 3 children died of TB in the house. After their death, she moved in with her husband's family and rented out the house. Maybe the woman in blue is one of them. Honestly, this author could basically just write "Who gives a fuck" under every one of these things, and it would just be the effect would be the same.
Maybe it's real, maybe it's not.
I'm just sitting here in my study polishing my shotgun, waiting for God to finally stop being a coward and take me.
I mean, yeah, because people dying of TB is really rare in those days. Never happened.
No, never once.
I'm gonna read a story that's clearly been written by Zach Baggins. Haunt 12, The Valley. Though the valley is mostly urban legend, it still has to be addressed here. There is a house off Cossard Road called the Demon House, where ghosts peer through the windows. Straight away there's a bit of disconnect there. While you drive up to the Demon House, the trees look like they're moving, and bending away from the house on whatever is in it. Legend has it if you get too close, black SUVs will chase you away. We don't want to get close enough to find out. Fucking hell. You know who's driving that black SUV? It's the poor guy that owns the house going, I wish these people had fuck off. Trees that bend? Whoa! Fuck me, do they not get wind in Delaware?
Paul, I just opened my eyes. Like, I just looked at the page, and immediately I saw slave napper. I'm going to hate this so much. Haunt 13, Woodburn Mansion. There are ghosts, then there are our kind of ghosts. Ghosts that like to drink. This is the one true thing you've said this entire article. Woodburn Mansion in Dover is the governor's mansion, and also home to 4 ghosts. Our favorite ghost is also known as the tippling ghost. The afterlife apparently could not quench his love of good wine. If you're in Woodburn and happen to leave some wine out overnight in a glass, when you wake up in the morning, it will be cold.
And the dog sleeps all day. Weird. There's no connection at all.
Okay, a couple more paragraphs, then we get to do ghost points and go home. One night, 2 residents sat at a table with wine in front of them, and were determined to stay up all night to see the ghost come and drink their wine. They fell asleep in their chairs, but when they woke up, the wine was gone. This ghost takes down an entire decanters of wine and may have made a trip down to the wine cellar. Our question for the tippling ghost is, are there hangovers in the realm where you live? Another ghost is a man dressed in turn-of-the-century garb, breeches, puffy shirt, that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff. Again, this guy's just fully...
Which century?
Point.
Nobody was wearing puffy shirts at the end of the 19th century. What's he on about?
He may as well just put in a stage direction, dismissive hand wave. You know. He's joined by a little girl who appears to float across the reflecting pond. The 4th ghost at Woodburn is not as good-spirited as the first 3, probably because he never gets any of the wine. He is the ghost of a slave napper. Yep, I hate this already. Who used to kidnap free or escaped slaves, chain them up, and then hide them until he could sell them back into slavery. One night, the slave napper, I don't love that they've given him like a playful nickname.
Yeah, you should just write the bastard.
Yeah, at best. At best. Anyways, one night the bastard was being chased. He hid in a poplar tree on the grounds of Woodburn. He hid so long that he fell asleep and accidentally strangled himself with his chains.
Of course he did.
They really did save the best for last.
Who hasn't done that?
This is like me trying to end a Fear Daily story. Oh, and then he strangled himself with his chains. I don't fucking know, whatever. He shot himself to death.
He was in the tree, and then a fat boy, ticking, turned up and ate the tree and him.
Yeah, ticking fat boy came out of the pond.
Anyway, what can people hear near this tree?
Oh, you're going to make me read it, aren't you?
You can't leave us hanging like this, unlike him.
The poplar tree is gone, but the ghost is still there, rattling his chain. Holy shit. Guys, I promise the next episode will be better. Good Lord. I'm jacked up on allergy meds, and I still think this is bad.
I'm incredulous. God, I hate loose stories.
I found this in the newspaper. I was so stoked. I was like, oh, great. We can thread this in with our thing. And I read the first couple. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. It's fine. It's just kind of a little bonus thing to add to the stories we've already got. And I was not prepared for, not only would it go off the rails, it would go over the lip of the canyon and crash on the rocks below.
Yes. Do we have many downloads in Delaware?
Not after this. Well, with our sincerest apologies, that was our Delaware episode. Me too. It gave us the Clockboy. It gave us drowning in piss. I think, it's not all bad news.
Yeah.
We went on a journey tonight, folks. I don't know that it was somewhere we wanted to go, but we went on a journey. That has been our Delaware show. Thanks for listening. Thanks for enduring this much of it. If you live in Delaware, send us an email. Explain why your ghost stories are so bad. ghoststoryguys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank the Tourist Board of Delaware for sponsoring today's episode. Thanks, guys.
I think their director of tourism is going to be on the building across from mine. I'm going to see a red dot appear on my chest.
Send
here shortly.
bullseye after you. Shoot that smarmy son of a bitch.
All right, guys. Again, if you want to get in touch, ghoststoryguys@gmail.com is the place to do it. We're also on Instagram as The Ghost Story Guys. We're on Facebook as The Ghost Story Guys Finally Made a Group. And we're on Reddit as r/Ghost Story Guys Podcast. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with the Ghost Force shoutouts. Hey there, listeners. Before you reach for that skip 15 seconds ahead button, I promise you this isn't an ad. We wanted to take a minute to talk to you about mental health. On this show, I've always tried to be as honest and open as possible about my struggles with depression and anxiety, because even though we've come a long way towards acknowledging the very real damage these things can do, there is still way too much lingering stigma about reaching out for help. And when you start to feel like there's no help, it's easy to start feeling like there's no hope. But Paul has joined me today to remind you there is always hope and there's always help.
We're not going to try and talk you out of self-harming right now, because we know that's not how it works. Instead, what we wanted to do was tell you something now and hope that should things get bad, you'll remember it and make a phone call or send a text message before you make any permanent decisions. As someone who knows all too well just how important mental health can be, it's never too late to reach out.
In Canada, the number to call is 133-456-4566. In the USA, the new number to call is 988. That's 988.
In the UK, the number to call is 116123 or text SHOUT, that's SHOUT, to 85258. In Australia, the number to call is 131114.
However bad shit seems, it will pass. And no matter what your brain might be telling you at any given moment, and believe me when I say I know this intimately, there are people who love you and people who care deeply about how you treat yourself. Should a time come when you find yourself despairing, please know that we've both been where you are, and there is a way back to the world. Take care. Welcome back. The Ghost Story Guys are Luke Greensmith, who helps us find our stories, Sarah Kent, who manages our Reddit community, Tanya Downing, who helps manage our Facebook community.
Our paranormal conductor is a very sniffly Mr. Brennan Snow.
And of course, my friend and co-host is the one, the only, the inimitable Paul Bestel, the paranormal Johnny Carson himself, host of Mysteries and Monsters. Paul, what's coming up on M&M?
We head to Scotland as I unpick, in the company of Malcolm Robinson, the Bonnybridge UFO enigma, as we talk about one of Britain's, if not Britain's most notorious hotspot for UFOs, with thousands of reports going back decades, which saw a massive influx of people, news reports and camera crews from all around the world turning up in the 90s. But it's still going on. The locals just can't be asked to talk about it anymore because they're sick of people taking the piss out of them. So we have a good chat about that. And it's a really great overview of that particular area, which, as we were talking about Chillingham earlier, seemed to have been one of those places where you mentioned UFOs in the 90s. It was Bonnybridge. It was the place to be. They were even talking about building a spaceport there. There were petitions handed into Parliament and the Prime Minister of the time. asking for an inquiry, and the government refused to do so. So it's still going on there. It's a very interesting location for all kinds of weird things in the sky.
Fascinating. And where can everyone find you online?
You can find Mysteries and Monsters across most social media networks and all podcast sites.
I'm Largely the Truth on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd, and you can find my horror fiction show, Fear Daily, everywhere fine podcasts live. As we said at the top of the show, we couldn't do this without our patrons, Apple Podcast, and YouTube subscribers. And if you would like to join that merry band, head to patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. That's patreon.com/ghoststoryguys, or become a friend of the cabin on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. That gets you access to bonus conversations between me and Paul, early access to ad-free shows, bonus shows like Host Adventures, as well as some of the other deep dives into spooky locations, and so much more. Again, that's patreon.com/ghoststoryguys, or become a friend of the cabin on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. And of course, if you support the show at the $20 level, well, my friend, that makes you part of a very elite club. That makes you part of a little something we like to call Ghost Force. That's right. Patrons who support us at the $20 level and above get thanked here every second story episode because you're crazy and we love you for it.
Ooh.
This time around, the members of Ghost Force, oh god, this is killing me, Paul. And I took the allergy pills. It is not helping.
Take more.
You'd be hosting the show by yourself. How you sleep at my keyboard? This time around, the members of Ghost Force are
Ethan Saragon,
Amy Chamberlain,
Charles Wood,
Crazy Mom Canada,
C.T.
Dexterous,
Eric Abel,
Floey Two Hats,
Gabrielle Alandez,
Hannah Brown,
Jade Moores,
Jenny Bonanani, Jenny Bonanani, Jenny Bonanani,
Jason R. Slaughter,
Slaughter, Jennifer Mullen,
Joseph Como,
Kissin Kate Barlow,
Liam Huddock,
Mara Noriega,
Mark Semler,
Megan Rocket,
Merlin Hansen,
Peter Gunn 08.5,
Robin Teen,
Rockin' Roddy Shenanigans,
Scrapbot 13,
Shannon Steyer,
Surreptitious Shipley,
and Trent Cannon. If you're the spooky, you are Ghost Force. For real, guys, thank you so much for your generous support. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate it. And if you want to have your name read out in that mad roll call, head to patreon.com/ghoststoryguys and sign up at the Ghost Force level. You can also sign up to Ghost Force via YouTube. Paul, my friend, any guest spots coming up?
I will have one at the end of May.
Okay.
And that is all I can say.
Keep an eye out for that. As for me, I was just a guest on an episode of Hometown Ghost Stories. They did a live stream on the ghost town of Two Guns, Arizona. So I had a lot of fun with those fellas, and you can find that on their YouTube channel. It's a video show. They tell you, man, they have a hell of a production over there. I was very impressed. I really kind of drove home that I have no interest in becoming a YouTube show, because that's a lot of fucking work.
Yes. Yes, there's many a cog turning there.
Holy man. And they managed to make it look easy, but I know it's not.
That's skill.
Indeed. As always, you can find all of our appearances linked in the blog at ghoststoryguys.com. And speaking of ghoststoryguys.com, head there if you want some Ghost Story Guys merch. We have lots of cool stuff. We got stickers, t-shirts, all manner of goodies. And again, that's all at ghoststoryguys.com. Our theme song, Radio, Into the Darkness We Go, is composed and performed by Peter Kursov of Pizzanta Music. Find more from him by searching for Pizzanta Music wherever you get your tunes. As always, that is streaming courtesy of Night Harvest Recordings, the Ghost Story Guys house label. And I think that's going to do it.
We'll be back next week, but until then...
I'm going to sneeze for a while. Then, into the darkness we go.
Good for you.
Oh no, I have no doubt. Although I would argue that you maybe can't hate something without knowing much about it. I would say that is a rare quality.
Sorry, one of the cats just threw themselves at the door
What the fuck?
outside to get in. Bastards. So yeah, since we've had the room done, the door doesn't shut properly. And so the cats have decided it's a really good game now just to push it open and fuck off.
Well, I've noticed we've had a lot more internet problems since you moved back in there too.
I don't know why, because I'm closer to the signal.
Oh, weird. I was going to say, like, I'll send you a range extender, but no, okay.
Yeah, I think I don't know what's going on.
You pissed something off is what you did.
Hey, I'm not the one who upsets the fail all the time.
That's true. That's true. I'm just going to take that right from the top. Oh, that's all coming out. I learned some stuff today.
That's one for family viewers.
Yep. Well, like I said, that's all coming out of the show anyways. So some of it will survive in outtake form, but not most of it.
Yeah, it does get quite tiring, I have to say.
Yes, I've also had lots of experience with anyways.
Chill out.
Yep, I know that from experience. Yikes. Obviously, that's not staying in the show, but boy, that hurt.